Okay, right now, just for a second, I want you to make a simple choice. Decide that you're going to snap your fingers in the next few moments. Go on, try it. And really pay attention to that feeling, that little internal flicker where you thought, okay, now, and then you did it. That sense of conscious will, it feels like the very definition of being in control, doesn't it?
But what if I told you that by the time you felt that decision, your brain had already gotten the ball rolling? That's the huge question we're diving into here. Does our conscious choice actually kick off the action, or is consciousness just the last one to get the memo?
You know, our gut feeling, our common sense, tells us the sequence is pretty simple. First, you think it. Then, your brain tells your body to do it. But back in 1983, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet ran an experiment that completely flipped this idea on its head. He found evidence that our brain might actually act before our mind even decides.
Now, this created a massive problem for Libet. I mean, how do you scientifically measure the exact moment an urge just pops into someone's head? It's a totally private experience, right? You can't just hook a wire up to a thought. So how on earth could he put a timestamp on it?
Well, Libet knew about a very specific signal that scientists could already measure. It's called the readiness potential. Basically, it's this wave of brain activity that always shows up right before you make a voluntary movement. You can think of it as the brain literally revving its engine. The real mystery was, when does this get ready signal happen compared to when we consciously decide to hit the gas? And here it is. This is what it actually looks like. You're looking at real data from Libet's work. See that slow, downward ramp of electrical activity? That's the brain preparing for action. And that sharp vertical line on the right, that's the muscle itself finally moving. The million-dollar question is, where on this timeline does the feeling of wanting to move actually show up?
So, to solve this timing puzzle, Libet designed this absolutely ingenious experiment. He figured out a way to link the inner, subjective world of a person's thoughts to the outer, objective world of scientific measurement, all by using a very, very fast clock.
Okay, so the instructions for the participants were actually pretty simple. First, they just had to stare at a spot of light that was revolving really quickly around a clock face. Second, at any moment they chose, whenever they felt that spontaneous urge to move, they were told to just flick their wrist. And third, this is the crucial part, they had to remember the exact position of that light on the clock at the very instant they first felt that urge to move. This brilliant setup let Libet capture 3 critical timestamps. He had the start of the brain's readiness potential from an EEG, that thing that measures brainwaves. He had the moment of conscious will, what he called W time, from the person's own report. And he had the exact moment of muscle movement from a sensor on their wrist. For the first time ever, all 3 of these events could be put on a single, precise time.
So Libet and his team collected all the data. They lined up the timelines from trial after trial, and when they finally saw the results, the order of events was not what anyone, and I mean anyone, expected.
Okay, this slide right here, this is the shocker. Let's start at time 0. That's when the wrist flexes. We'll use that as our anchor. Now, people reported feeling the urge to move at around 200 milliseconds before the action. Okay, that makes sense. But the readiness potential, that get-ready signal in the brain, it began a staggering 550 milliseconds before the action.
Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. The brain's preparation to act began over a third of a second before the person felt any conscious intention to do it. This means a decision to move is already bubbling away in the brain totally unconsciously long before we have any clue it's even happening.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is how Libet himself summed it up in the original paper. The conclusion was unmistakable. The brain's initiation of a freely voluntary act can start unconsciously way before we have any subjective awareness that a decision has been made.
So, as you can imagine, this finding sent absolute shockwaves through neuroscience and philosophy. I mean, think about it. If your brain starts the process of acting before you are aware of your intention, then in what sense did you freely choose to do it? It challenges our most basic, intuitive feeling of being in the driver's seat.
This slide lays it out perfectly. Our intuition, what we feel every day, says, I decide, my brain acts, then I move. Simple. But what Libet found flips those first 2 steps completely around. The brain begins to act, then I become aware of the decision, and then I move. It's like our consciousness is a latecomer to its own party.
But hold on, because just when you think the case is closed on free will,
the story takes this final, really important twist. See, Libet himself didn't believe his experiment destroyed the idea of free will. Not at all. He argued it simply changed its job description. He didn't think consciousness was the one starting the action, but he did think it could be the gatekeeper.
This is his idea of a conscious veto. The urge to move appears at around -200 milliseconds, but the final, point of no return signal to the muscles isn't sent until about 50 milliseconds before the act. This leaves a critical window of about 150 milliseconds. And in that time, consciousness might not be able to start the action, but it has more than enough time to stop it. You know, like when you resist a tempting dessert or you hold back a sarcastic comment, that's free won't in action, vetoing an urge that just bubbled up from your unconscious. So in this view, our free will isn't really about initiating things from scratch. It's about having the power of free won't. It's the capacity to either approve or reject the constant stream of impulses our brain generates for us. So maybe consciousness isn't the author of the story, but it gets to be the final editor. It holds the red pen.
And that leaves us with this huge, fascinating final question, doesn't it? If our conscious mind is more of a censor than a creator, what's its ultimate purpose? Is it here to generate our best ideas, or is it really just here to save us from our worst ones?